This is a massive show we're doing here. This is the reason why the whole of manifestation took place. And ladies and gentlemen, I really mean this, and I speak as an adept. He described this as a historical precedent. You have these three different masters using different words, but saying the same thing. You have Mars Sector 6 with his introduction of transmutation. You have the Master Jesus talking about returning as conscious God. And you have the Master Aetherius talking about a process of sensitization. The important point that Dr. King was drawing that shocked him, that staggered him, that hit him hard was...
Hello and welcome back to the Spiritual Freedom Show with Richard Lawrence. My name is Darren Ball, and this is the podcast helping you to awaken your chakras, to unlock your psychic powers, and to discover true spirituality. In this episode, Richard and I explore three extremely profound revelations given by spiritual aliens through the mediumship of Dr. George King. We'll be going deep into the relationship between the chakras, kundalini, karma, and experience, revealing not only the reason why we're here, but the reason for the whole of creation itself. At one time on Earth, we believed that nirvana was the end, but now we can see that it's just the beginning of our cosmic journey. So see you on the other side for my own reactions to this episode.
Richard.
Darren.
So I think we have got a groundbreaking show in store for everybody today who's listening. And I think it's about one of the biggest questions of all time, not just for people on Earth even, but for people throughout the universe, about why the universe even exists in the first place.
Yeah.
So today we're going to be sharing extracts from three different beings who spoke through the mediumship, the unique mediumship of Dr. George King, to reveal what the purpose of creation really is. I thought I'd start just a little bit of backstory here, which I have to bring you in on, which is that it seems that before Dr. King spoke about this initially, that he had entered into meditation and that he had realized that, number one, no one, at least on Earth, seems to know why creation exists. And number two, he didn't believe that it could be known by anyone on Earth. But what's your take on that?
He says it very explicitly in the book Contact Your Higher Self Through Yoga, which was published, I believe it was in 1955. Yes, it was first published. And so the Aetherius was only founded in 1955. Most of the transmissions hadn't been delivered. The 12 blessings hadn't been delivered. The 9 freedoms hadn't been delivered. He was drawing for this particular book, not specifically on the transmissions he was receiving from other worlds, but on his yoga experience through the previous years and his knowledge of yoga from various sources and his own experience. And he does make the statement about how creation came into being. Shall I read a bit of it?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
The spirit as an individualized particle of God must be completely perfect and therefore beyond the possibility of evolution, unless the Creator had seen fit in the beginning to involve each individualized divine spark of himself. This then is what happened. In the beginning, there was silent, motionless perfection, which was God. Then God as the Creator saw fit to involve or wrap up each specific part of himself in matter. So we had the great outbreathing, the result of which was all manifestation on every plane of existence, the whole unit of cosmic manifestation. That's ancient teaching, ancient yoga teaching. Next, we have the great control of the breath of God, during which time the spirit passed further and further into matter, according to the plan of the divine architect. Then we have the great inbreathing, during which time the spirit throws off the binding shackles of mind and matter and evolves until it is God again. This is the logical explanation of how creation was made. No man knows why. For some reason beyond even the capacity of our deepest meditations, God saw fit to involve himself and thereby necessitate the system of evolution. And that's 1955. He had, as you rightly say, by then, entered samadhi, entered deep meditation. So that's, if you like, the setting.
Yes, absolutely. So then we have the cosmic teachings that begin to be given. Yeah. And I thought I would share this next quote because I think it really underscores how much of a dramatic shift this was and what an impact it made on him, when he was reflecting on these. Here he is talking, I believe in his commentary on the 7th freedom. And he says, to a yogi like myself, who has had a certain degree of initiation, which I talk not about, only now mentioning it to illustrate certain points, this hits me, I think, harder than anything. It's a precedent, when you believe and feel in your minds that the greatest interpretation has been given, and suddenly another interpretation is given, especially through you, it really staggers you. And this staggers me, because information like this is of such vastness
This is a massive show we're doing here.
Yeah.
And Dr. King described the reference you came up with there. He described this as a historical precedent.
Yeah.
A precedent was made, and he was talking there about the revelation in the seventh freedom of the change of the meaning of the triangular symbol of God, which had been taken to mean transmigration, or you might even say some say transformation, I believe. So you have creation, then you have preservation, then you have transmigration, where you leave the evolutionary process and return back to God, and they would have said at one time through nirvana. Nirvana has two different meanings, actually. In Hinduism and Buddhism, it can be taken to mean the highest state of consciousness you can enter, which we would call cosmic consciousness.
Yeah.
It can be taken to mean your ascension, essentially, which they didn't understand, some of them, your return to the Godhead.
I see.
They didn't then know that there was much more evolution to take place before the ultimate return. So you can have both those different meanings, and some equate the two. And I do believe there are some people who would have entered a high state, let's say a high condition, samadhic condition, expecting this to be their amalgamation with divinity, and might even have been, although you don't experience surprise in that state, afterwards at least very surprised to find out there's more involved. Anyway, I digress. The important point that Dr. King was drawing that shocked him, that staggered him, that hit him hard, was that the statement I read out at the beginning that's published in Contact to Your Higher Self Through Yoga no longer necessarily applies now that that particular teaching has been given. That this is why we are here, to return through evolution back to God again, and back through a process of transmutation of all matter and all thought to the highest level. I think the Master Aetherius, in one of his transmissions, calls it a process of sensitization.
Yes.
Which maybe you're coming on to, I don't know. But we have the absolute key revelation also in the 12 blessings.
Yeah, let's go on to that one, actually. So here, in this case, we have the Master Jesus speaking through Dr. George King. And I think the key quote to pull out that he gives is this one. These great and mighty lords of karma make it possible for fools like ye and me to gain that experience which will lead us back to the Godhead as conscious gods. That's certainly one of them. What would you say in terms of what we would take away from that, in terms of what it reveals?
Well,
about?
it's massive. It's absolutely, and forgive me, I don't want to sound in any way patronizing here. Some people might not see how massive it is. I think the more you experience the higher states of consciousness, or we do, the more we'll realize just what a massive change this is. Let me just read a quote by Dr. King.
This is him speaking now.
This is him speaking about the quote you've just made.
Got it.
He says, in other words, God, in a certain form, was given experience, or a whole lot of experiences, so that God as an unconscious part could become God as a conscious part. Now, this is the reason why we're here, why the whole of manifestation took place. And ladies and gentlemen, I really mean this, and I speak as an adept. This information is the sum total of the intellectual or spiritual possibilities of man.
Yeah.
And you can see the difference there from his earlier years, when he says, even beyond the capacity of our deepest meditations, God saw fit to evolve himself and thereby necessitate the system of evolution. We didn't know the why.
Yeah.
Now he's absolutely explicit. This is the reason why we're here, why the whole of manifestation took place. And this can be put together with the seventh freedom. They are different ways of really saying the same thing. Master Jesus saying we return to the Godhead as conscious gods. That's why. Because before that we weren't conscious gods. Then we will be conscious gods. And it's also the whole question of the transmutation. If it was just transmigration, which is what they believe, it was just detaching from maya, detaching from matter, detaching from experience, and, as it were, disappearing into the Godhead, what would have been the point of it all? You can see that, really. Why go through all that just to detach from it? But if it's to transmute every thought, every action, and take it to the highest level so that you have the consciousness of that transmutation, there's a purpose.
This is the answer to the meaning of life. This is the answer to why we're here. What is our purpose for being here? We're talking about it obviously from the standpoint of the absolute and why it came into being in totality. But then if you brought it down to the individual level, how do you think you would distill that?
Well, I mean, it's reflected in our inner journey, because our inner journey, as we've spoken before, with the chakras, with the transmutation of the blockages in the chakras and in the nadis, and it's a process of transmutation. If it wasn't, and I think this could be one of the problems that some mystics and yogis of the past had. There's a bigger one, which is actually, sorry to say it, but selfishness. They got too concerned, preoccupied with their own development as opposed to service to all. But in one way, if you thought that all you were trying to do was escape, as it were, away from the world of matter, your body doesn't matter, nothing, it's not real, the only reality is within you. If you thought that, you could think that all I have to do is detach from everything. You don't realize, yes, you've got to detach. Yes, you've got to control. But yes, you've got to transmute as well. And you can't actually transmute unless you have a certain detachment. So there is a paradox there, but you still have to do it. And you can do it through experience, or you can do it through practices. I mean, there's something the Master Aetherius said prior to his first ever public transmission. So we're in the very, very early days here.
Okay.
But it is published in You Are Responsible. He says, your spiritual exercises will help you. You are told that you will have certain experiences of a spiritual nature, and you do so. You would normally need to live thousands of years in order to gain this evolutionary advancement. It is essential and necessary you practice diligently and have these experiences, some of which are pleasant, some are unpleasant. That's interesting. Try to remember them and live through them again and again until you fully understand them. Then you will pass on above them. You are all the time sensitizing yourselves to the highest aspects of planetary mind.
Okay, that is taking it to that level individually, so we can understand what it means for us.
Yes, so that's the internal process. But as we've discussed before, you also need to gain experience in the world to trigger the essential lessons and release the essential blockages, or let's put it another way, force you to deal with the essential blockages, which you could just even internally ignore, but you haven't yet transmuted. So that process is going on within, and it's changed everything. I believe it's changed our whole approach to even yoga practices, because everything now has to be transmuted, not just detached from, not just risen above, but they themselves have to be risen above.
Yeah, I like that. Also, it is strange in a way, because those great beings who've already achieved ascension and maybe did so thousands, maybe tens of thousands of years ago on Earth, they must have been doing this even though this wouldn't have been necessarily the wisdom at the time.
They must have done, yes. They would have to realize everything has to be transmuted, whether they saw it that way or not.
I see.
After all, you're dealing here with ascended masters, with people who are really, sorry to use the word, but good is the only word.
Yeah.
These are wonderful.
Yeah.
They make us look ridiculous, in their purity, in their total devotion. And that purity and that devotion will bring about a transmutation. And by the way, even for us lowly ones, us unascended ones, and I've learned this, and I'm certainly no example, and let me say that, but things such as kindness, forgiveness, humility, absolutely, patience, tolerance are very important. They're not just good moral things, behavior patterns. They are essential in our development, because they are a way of controlling and therefore transmuting the internal energies as we become. In fact, I can quote better than me saying it from the Fourth Freedom, and Mars Sector 6 lists off some of these qualities about enlightenment and tending it with sufficient care, sufficient kindness, sufficient patience, sufficient tolerance. If he tends it with intelligence, if he tends it by manipulating his karmic pattern through the right service, this will grow and blossom and bear all fruits. So you do need those qualities. I'm very interested in this. I've certainly found it to be absolutely true. It's certainly a way of controlling the energies that are going to start to become awakened within you. And they do need to be controlled. But I also note he uses the word sufficient. He doesn't say with care, kindness, patience, tolerance. He said with sufficient care, sufficient kindness, sufficient patience, sufficient tolerance. Because there's a limit to how far those things should be exhibited, is how I read that. Anyway, coming back to this, when he gets onto intelligence, though, he doesn't say sufficient. We do have to have intelligence. And, you know, I've said before, if I said on another podcast with somebody who invited me on the other day, I said, you know, he was talking about critical thinking and the importance of it. So many spiritual aspirants or people in the New Age movement, they do away with critical thinking. And this broadcast or this interviewer is all for still applying our logic, our thinking, our critical thinking to it. And I agree with him. It's true. I did say, though, you can't critically think your way to enlightenment.
Yeah.
You've got to do more than that. But you do need it. And, of course, intelligence is even a step above that. You need to apply intelligence to what you're going through. And then, of course, it doesn't qualify either, manipulating his karmic pattern through the right service. Interesting that, the right service. Not just, well, how do I want to help? Oh, I know, I like helping in this way. It's not that. It's the service that you were destined to do. It's the greatest service you can possibly give to the whole world. That's the right service.
And we can discover that through listening to our higher self or...
Yeah, or in many ways, listening to our higher self is the best way. But even logic will tell us, you know, what difference is this making to the world as a whole? Yes, we should do we should help people and all the rest of it. But how can I do the maximum good based on what I believe? Of course, has to be based on that for all. Coming back to the why of creation, you have these three different masters. Yeah. Master to six, the Master Jesus, and Master Aetherius, in using different words but saying the same thing. You have Master with his introduction of transmutation, as opposed to transmigration. That's taking all experience back to God.
I like it, yeah.
You have the Master Jesus talking about returning as conscious gods, using that word, conscious. And you have the Master Aetherius talking about a process of sensitization, taking you ever higher, 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 while at the same time, of course, doing it both through experiences and internally as well. As he said, you can go through thousands of years through your spiritual practice, but he also talks about the need to gain experience in the world, and that brings sensitization.
I might read a little bit more from his quote, actually, just earlier in the extract before you read, where he says that all planetary minders want it is quite possible for you to sit down and meditate and know exactly what is going on every planet. If your different brains are sensitive enough, you can all do this. It is because your brains are not sensitive enough that you cannot do it. They are sensitized by evolution. What is evolution? Evolution is experience, so brains are sensitized by experience of different types and by the repetition of these experiences. They are sensitized by the experience of living through these experiences. These are the things that give you the essential sensitivity necessary in order to pick up and understand the higher aspects of mind. At the present time, you are all being bombarded by the very high, very fast magnetic impulses of all mind, but you can only understand those traveling very slowly, and the impulses traveling at a faster rate cannot be understood by you. So it is up to you to develop sensitivity and have experiences as quickly as possible.
Yes, well, I mean, that says it brilliantly, and this whole process of evolving through sensitization, again, it tells you the why we're here, what we're leading to. By the way, I will say that point he made at the beginning there about you can know what's going on other planets. I've had one experience of that. I was in a state of which I call entry-level cosmic consciousness. I believe I was helped to enter it. In that case, it was my first. So I've only had two experiences. I say I've had two. This was the first of the two. But in it, I did become aware, so I can verify to some degree. I'm sure it was a limited degree of beings on different planets in general, and So it's amazing what the capabilities are within all of us, actually.
Totally.
Because if I can
what a
do
great
it,
example.
anyone can do it. Yeah.
The other thing I take away from this quote by the Master Aetherius, just in terms of the clarity that it gives me, is the fact that it contextualizes, as you say, why we have this experience. I mean, in the quote by the Master Jesus, he's talking about that we have all, we go back to the God having had all experience, but this sort of tells us why we have all experience.
It does.
To sensitize ourselves in this way. And that it's up to us to develop our sensitivity so that we do it as quickly as possible. So it's even giving us kind of clarity around like what we need to do in order to fulfill the meaning of life and the reason that we're here in the first place.
Well, let's end with this absolute corker, if I can say that, from Master Aetherius, again published in You Are Responsible. We don't know the date of it. I haven't been able to find the date of it. It's in a transmission called Interplanetary Policy. Master Aetherius made this incredible statement. Let your mathematicians play about with their 3-dimensional formulas. You stick to your 6-dimensional beliefs and have your 9-dimensional faith, and you will see the 25-dimensional power work out. And, the great mathematician Pascal, French mathematician, did actually have what seems to be a Kundalini experience. He calls it a night of fire, where he did realize, and actually he had this sewn into his jacket, and it was to remind him always that the real answers come through the heart. So even this great mathematician realized that. It's an incredible statement. It's using the word dimension in a different way than it's sometimes used. It's not the same as the 7 dimensions of creation, if people are familiar with that.
Helpful.
It's an early, as I say, probably very early transmission. It is known that there are 25 dimensions of sensitization, which is why it's relevant. And they'll list them in some Sanskrit writings. I think it's contained, I believe, in Serpent Power by Sir John Woodruff and some other texts where they break down these different things to the 5 elements, the 5 senses. Prana is 5-fold, as we know, so 25 is an interesting number. But as it becomes more and more sensitized, you reach higher and higher levels. I think they use the word Purusha, I believe, in some writings for the highest one, which is virtually the soul. Some use different words are used to translate it, but it takes it to the very highest aspect of our superconscious being. It doesn't get to the point of spirit, which is unmanifested. But there's all these levels of manifestation, and that's the power, the 25-dimensional power. So you have your 3-dimensional mathematics. We're very familiar with that. 1 and 1 is 2. And even within the mathematics, you have contradictions. I mean, what's 1 over 0 equals infinity? That's a mystical concept. But however, then you have your 6-dimensional belief. So there you're starting to tap into some higher, more sensitized aspects of energy.
There's a practical work, what the Master Aetherius is saying.
Yes, and then the 9-dimensional faith is an even stronger thing. And it's faith which has obviously got to be based on some intuitive impulse. It's not blind faith he's talking about there. So then you're tapping into 9 of these 25 dimensions, and you'll then gradually evolve through sensitization until the 25-dimensional, all aspects of being to the very, very highest in manifestation work out.
I think it's the first time I've ever heard that explained. Thank you very much, Richard.
Thank you.
Hey, Spiritual Freedom Show family, thanks for tuning into the show. This has got to be one of my favorite topics, and who else could give us the clarity and the perception as much as Dr. King and the Cosmic Masters? Can you imagine how many lives we've been searching for this answer? How many lives we've spent in despair and frustration, trying to understand what life is really about, and painfully limited by the confused and very basic ideas that have been promoted during that time. And yet, as unbelievable as it sounds, right here we have the answer. There is God's purpose for the whole of creation, which is to evolve back through transmutation to the divine source from which we came in the beginning, conscious of all experience. There is our own life purpose, which is to raise the Kundalini and gain mastery over all experience in this classroom of Earth. But if there's one thing to take away from this episode, one word which describes in practical terms what we need to do in the light of this truth, that word is service. Because in the end, life is not about the relentless pursuit of material things and achievements. It's not about the job you have, the salary you earn, the house you live in. It's about the contribution that you make. And when we look back on our lives and our experiences to date, Are not those moments of greatest joy and fulfillment those moments where we did something to help others? The simple truth is there is no greater joy than playing your part to make the world a better place, and no greater sense of fulfillment than fulfilling your spiritual destiny. And that's why the meaning of life is such a beautiful thing. Now, if you enjoyed that episode about the why of creation, then do subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future episodes with Richard and myself discussing what you can do to awaken your chakras, to unlock your psychic powers, and to discover true spirituality. Now, if you're interested in more right now, I recommend that you check out this video over here, which offers a practical guide to karma and kundalini. Thanks for tuning into the show. See you next time.